We are starting soon.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Season 5 here on Album Book Club. This week we're doing Power Windows by Rush. I guess we do a little bit of the back history here. This is album number 11 for them. And we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of it. It came out October 11th, 1985. This is a RIAA Platinum certified album. If you don't know Rush, go listen to Rush. This is maybe not the best intro.
I don't know who doesn't know Rush.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can get more into it as we go. Start with top 3, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I can go first, I guess. My top 3 are Manhattan Project, The Big Money, and Mystic Rhythms.
My top 3 are Grand Designs, Territories, and Manhattan Project.
We go in reverse orders, right?
We can do whatever.
I don't know what the
He looked at me, so I just went.
we can go reverse order. Yeah, we'll go.
Max
reverse
is also
order.
here.
Max is also here.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I'm back. Yeah, my top 3, it's going to be Grand Designs, The Big Money, and Emotion Detector.
My top 3 were Territories, The Big Money, and Middletown Dreams.
Our top 3, I believe, were the same as Carl's in different order: The Big Money, Mystic Rhythms, and Manhattan Project.
Gosh, it's going to get messy this episode, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we only had 8 songs to choose from this time, so we
That's
each
true.
chose almost half the album. All right, with bottom songs, I think I can already tell them, so you guys aren't going to like me for this one. Mine was Territories.
Mine was Marathon.
Mine was Manhattan Project.
Mine was Marathon.
They're gonna think I'm just copying him. Territories. I swear I wrote my own notes.
Are you sure?
Not anymore.
He actually just wrote your notes down.
Yeah. Carl
Nice.
wrote your notes
He was
for
like,
you.
I got a host.
Carl
I'm
looked
taking
away
your
for a
notes."
second when he got here, and I just started writing everything down.
Yeah, I literally just grabbed the entire notes. I'm trying to remember. This is a loosely themed album. Each one of the tracks is about the theme of power in one way or another, and I was going to see if they were actually listed.
I actually mentioned the theming through this album a lot because that was the big thing I honed in on. Because I'll be honest, I've listened to a lot of Rush, so a lot of Rush just sounds like Rush, especially when I'm listening to an album I don't really know. And I thought it was cool. You know, we got to listen to one of their lesser-known albums. So, you know, listening to a new side I hadn't really listened to before. But it all still sounded like Rush.
It sounds like a lot like the side you do know.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely not my favorite Rush album by any means, and I'm sure everyone knows Rush is one of my favorite bands. They kind of do this interesting thing where they kind of build up, and this is kind of the beginning of where I think they find what is their mature sound and their mature voice. My only real problem with this album overall, and we'll get into it, but it just takes itself a little too seriously, I think, for what they become later. You know, later Rush is all about having this sense of humor, and there's not any of that in this album, which is kind of interesting. And I think some of that is just the thematic parts of the whole thing. All right, it looks like Big Money, The Big Money, which is track 1, is just about the power of the economy. So it actually is just really hitting
Money.
the
Makes
nose
sense.
on the head. All right, we can start with scores. I gave The Big Money a 9.
I gave it a 7.5.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 7.5.
Gave it an 8.5.
Logan, we're matching today.
Yeah.
We're locking in.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I can start. All right, sorry. This album is very synth forward, but is not there is still some guitar in it, which is good because Alex tends to get a little drowned later on. But this song opens with this huge tone right away, and I think it's really cool that they chose this as the opener because it hits right when the album comes on. Being that this came out in '85, the synths are a little bit dated, but it's cool. It's like a retro future kind of way. That's all I really have, other than Geddy, Alex, and Neil are all on it like normal.
It's really funny that you say that because most of my notes are about the bass and synth pretty much throughout, but I have like a conscious note written down about, oh, hey, I found the guitar in the next song. Like I didn't even register that it was here in this one. But yeah, no, bass killed it. It was like a woodblock sound that I felt the need to write a note about, I guess. I really like the synths throughout this album though.
Yeah, the synths are really cool. My first note on this is sounds like a Rush song because it is one. No, that's just where my headspace was going into this album. I was like, okay, something new that you heard before. Get used to it. I really like how they have these different breaks in the song. The variation in sounds that we get through them are really cool. I was actually able to pick up the guitar a couple times in that, and I thought it sounded really neat there. And I think this song has a really fun chorus, honestly. It has a little bit of a groove to it. Keeps you going.
Yeah. I feel like my favorite part was revolving around the guitars that I was picking up on. But the switch up is something that you get really early on in this album, and then you just keep hearing it throughout the album. So they kind of set the scene of like, we're going to get half of a song right here, and then we're switching it up, and we're going to do a different sound, and then make that evolve. So that was a woodblock? I thought it was a cowbell.
No, that was definitely like an 80s woodblock hit.
I was loving it. I was like, whatever the cowbell woodblock thing is in the background, they're just loving to hit that thing really hard.
Just loving all the little binks.
Oh, yeah, it was great. The only thing that I didn't get it like to a 9 was the lyrics. I just felt like kept repeating over and over, and I just wanted a little bit more. But I think I'm going to grow to regret that note with the future songs here. So we'll get into that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be darned. You guys hit it all. Intros got the hard cutting synth. Drums. The drums were really fun. Neil Peart is always fun. There was a great bounce on the hi-hat that was just really unusual but fit. The bass was ripping. They do the Rush pause real bad in this song. If you don't know what that is, go listen to Rush. They do the exact same pause in like every song. It's hilarious.
It's because they're not playing to a click. They're literally watching each other and coming in. It's wild. I don't know how they pull it off.
Real music.
Yeah, the chorus is a little lackluster on this song. I didn't love it. It was fine, just not my favorite. And towards the end, they get a cool, fun, just funky riff going back into their proper key, and then the outro. It's a pretty good song.
So I didn't catch it. I didn't realize this was it, but apparently there's some samples of voices at some point that are Neil Peart saying certain words, and he triggers them with his electronic drums.
Huh.
There's a bunch of weird like sampling and resampling, and I mean almost like Radiohead level nonsense going on this album. And considering it's '85, that's kind of cool. The other thing about The Big Money, this is one of the 2 singles off this album. We might find that interesting. All right. Track 2, if everybody's ready, you ready? Is Grand Designs, and this one is about mainstream music and how superficial it is, which is a very common Rush thing. I don't know how much Rush lore we want to get into, but they never really got their due in the 80s. They sort of did later. Looking back at it, people were like, yeah, we love Rush, but in the 80s, they were kind of this band that only nerds listened to, is how they were seen, and they were just seen as kind of nerdy dudes, and they got jaded about it. So they have a lot of songs that are about kind of music just being cheesy and fake. So this is one of those. I gave this one an 8.
I also gave this one an 8.
This one gets a 10.
Oh,
I give this one a 7.
7.5.
Oh,
All right. This is the first song where I really picked up on the theming here. One, I actually really like how they illustrate this theme. They're talking about how someone above them is putting everybody underneath them in these tiny little boxes, and everybody just feels like they need to stay in these boxes. And that's pretty literal. Like, that's what he kind of alludes to in the song. So I feel like playing outside of those boxes, trying to break down the walls, that's something everybody wants to do, Everyone's always trying to break the glass ceiling. Well, we aren't because we're men, but it is what it is.
That's fucked.
Well, the glass ceiling specifically refers to, like, women in the workplace, so sorry.
I thought that was a scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
No.
Okay.
I felt like the keyboard intro just coming in like really quick and then leading into just a fantastic crescendo of just all these instruments playing at peak level towards the end. I was just loving it. And then the vocalist got like a little high pitched in this one. He was like kind of just wailing out, and it started giving me like Dragon Force vocalist energy, and I love it. I was like, okay, I can get into this. And then the guitar solo was just sweet by the end.
So,
Really great.
hearing how you feel about the vocals, I have a question for you. So, the O's at the end, how do you feel specifically about those?
Was that more of a like background? I don't know if I caught that one.
In the
Not by the
lyrics
end.
themselves, they are notated out as lyrics.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, no.
And there are 55 of them, if you didn't know.
No, didn't go in and start to count like all the O's or anything.
I noticed like halfway through, it was like, there's a lot of these. What's going on? Like, this is a lot of this song.
I wonder if that was also the same thing, like with the sample on the drum pad or something like that.
Maybe.
No, it was
No,
like
it was him
it was a
singing.
whole
Yeah.
a whole chant, which is actually
Okay.
most of the reason that my score is not as high, because the bass is great, the guitar I actually heard it, the solo is great, but there is just so much cheering. I wrote it as cheering. It's more chanting, I think, but it's just they forgot lyrics. They were like, we're not going to do lyrics for the rest of the song. We're just going to yell.
Yeah.
I
think-
say, oh,
yeah.
55
And like by
times
the
in a
end, I
row.
was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm yelling with them. Let's go. It was great.
So neat Rush fact. The first time I heard Rush, I told my dad, I said, "Man, that girl cannot sing." So I, Getty's high vocals have never been my favorite thing. I didn't pick up on the O's so bad on this one though.
Wow, you're the D100 hater though.
Yeah, normally I don't know. This
Rush gets the rose tinted
that's-
glasses.
yeah,
That's fair.
100%. Yeah, that's what's going on.
Yeah. Fun synth intro. It felt very reminiscent of like Bob O'Reilly, which I think was on purpose. Kind of a dig at them. The drums were fun, but it really made me realize how much I was not going to love this album because of how synth heavy it was. I prefer Geddy Lee playing bass, not playing synth. I like when him and Alex are bouncing off each other more. It just, don't get me wrong, none of this was bad, but it's not the Rush I know and love. So I was a little disappointed.
So there's actually a thing with Rush where Alex kind of like it got really. He never, I don't think, threatened to leave the band, but after they fixed it, he kind of admitted to them that he got madder and madder every time they added more and more synths, and there were less spots for him to play because Geddy is singing, playing bass, and playing synth, and then Neil's doing Neil's thing and just playing the heck out of the drums, and then Alex's parts just got smaller and smaller as time went on, and he just kind of got madder and madder. And this is, I guess, the last, what is that, 2 albums ago? Is that Presto or Signals? So yeah, now I'm forgetting my Rush lore. Signals. Signals is when it kind of starts, which is the album after Moving Pictures, the one that everyone universally loves. But they continue getting more and more synth heavy as time goes on until he basically puts his foot down and is like, hey, I'm tired of this.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that during this album where, I don't know, it started pretty like guitar heavy, especially with this song. And then after that, I think that was sort of where like my score started going down. I was like, man, I wanted whatever was in that song, like give me more of those solos, give me more of this. And then some of them, like the solos last just a couple seconds and it's like, oh, we're done.
I forget which track. I'll have to look when we get to it. But there is a track later where he is actually playing an acoustic guitar that's triggering a synth or something goofy like that.
That's wild.
Yeah. So even he ends up playing synth at some point on this. Yeah, the only thing I wrote you guys didn't mention is just how 80s everything is.
Oh,
You know, it's like I want to like wear like square shoulders and like everything's pink and green and it's just like super high tech and I mean I don't know.
Everything is kind of pink and green, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, kind of.
You're the only one not in uniform.
I'm not in uniform.
You're the only one in
I was
uniform,
gonna-
actually.
Max is in uniform.
yeah.
No, he doesn't have blue jeans on. He's got
No.
green.
I think it's just black. He's got the hat to make up for it, though.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the only one with a hat this time.
Shameless Dungeon Train plug.
Yeah, of course. Podcast Wars.
I just followed you guys yesterday.
Let's go.
Is Dungeon Train following
I
the
haven't-
album book
I
club?
haven't posted anything in 2 years.
I saw that.
Let's go.
will
I think
listen
we may
back.
be winning, boys.
I think the only other thing I had about this song was that it felt short despite not really being short. I think most of the songs are about the same length, minus one that's a little longer. But it didn't feel long for like a over 5 minute long track. But I just wish there was more variation in the sound towards the end
Yeah.
because it's like the same looping part and the chants.
No, yeah, this one flew by where I feel like some were definitely hitting their 5 minute. Like, ooh, we could trim a little bit from the front.
I kind of wonder how much of that is the label too, because at this point Rush was having a lot of trouble with their label, and they're known for like having 5 and 6 minute songs and then like 20-minute songs, and there was no big huge ballad track on this, and I guess
Yeah.
there's not really many on later Rush albums, but
The longest song is 6 minutes 20 seconds, and I don't know what the shortest is, but they're all over 5.
I think this was definitely a label thing because this is far less prog than they were, like even just the album prior.
so it's still Mercury. So they were on Mercury in the beginning. I know they left Mercury a couple albums later and went to Atlantic for Presto. So there's Hold Your Fire after this, which actually did it abysmally bad, and then they left Mercury and went to Atlantic. But yeah, they always had trouble with their labels pushing them and getting the support they needed from the labels. So that's nothing new. All right, if we're ready, we're on to track 3, which is Manhattan Project. I gave this one a 10.
Gives one a 7.5.
I gave this one a 4.
Oh my god.
I gave us a 7.
I gave it an 8.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine. I'm kind of
I'm so sorry.
I'm kind of curious to hear why. I wanna know what
All
you-
right. I think it just followed up a really good song because I was like 10 out of 10 song. So good. And then we get this weird like spaceship intro. So it's like a spaceship lifting off. And I'm like, okay, where are we going from here? And then the pace just seems like it was just like sapped. Like it was just very slow compared to what we were just starting with. And then I feel like we were just hearing an entire like classic 80s story because it's just like those songs that they just keep talking to you. They're just like, yeah, we're going to give you so much story here. And then by the end I was just like, man, we're watching Oppenheimer right here.
Yeah, this one's theming is kind of shoved straight down your throat. No subtlety in this one. It's about the atomic bombs. I think the build-up in this one is really cool. I like the slower background combined with like the faster pace of the lyrics has this weird sense of urgency, and I feel like that fits the theming really well. The Enola Gay reference is absolutely crazy. Like that's the name of the plane. Why is it a bar in here? But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I really dig the song the whole time. The theming was really cool. A lot of cool references in there.
I think this song would have the biggest turnaround when I listened to this more because it definitely felt like the album's track. It felt like the album was kind of trying to get this almost like scary power struggle thing happening here, and it was the most story that they were throwing into a song. So I was like, okay, they put a lot of time and effort into like the plot here. Maybe I need to just break it down a little bit more, so it'll probably have the biggest turnaround.
Yeah, there's an interesting note. I didn't know this before looking at this. Apparently Neil had a really hard time writing the lyrics for this one. And if you don't know, Neil wrote almost all of the lyrics for Rush, and basically since he had lived through some of the stuff happening, he was trying to write it objectively, and apparently the song at certain points was a lot more harsh. And they get a little more harsh later, I mean, especially on Vapor Trails. The name of the album literally tells you what it's about. But apparently, Alex Lifeson said he thoroughly researched the topic, and it led it to be a little boring lyrically. You know, Neil's kind of a dry guy. If you get to see any of his interviews or if you ever read any of his writing, he's very, very dry. So if he starts getting wordy, it starts to become a problem. But that being said, I think that's how this ends up being one of my favorite Rush tracks is whenever he starts telling a story, his way of doing it is just something I've always enjoyed. You know, one of my other favorite Rush tracks is Red Barchetta. It's the same thing. That's based on a short story he read in Motor Trend. And it's just the way he can weave lyrics to do that stuff. That and there's a really fat backbeat in this when he lays in and kind of does this like halftime thing. And then we get the choir here too, which is it was actually recorded with a choir. That's not a synth.
The choir was very cool.
Yeah.
I did like that. And there was like a weird beeping. Was there like
We
weird...
love beeps and boops.
There was beeps towards the end, and I was like, "We're just beeping here. Like, there's no rhythm. We're just beeping." And you know what? I like it.
like censored television.
We took all the notes, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, a little bit. The only issue I think I had with this song is I want to say it's the mix. It could have been my headphones, but it fixes itself late, like right after this. The vocals on the intro are weird. And did I write down?
I think they did that on purpose.
And
it was
probably is.
supposed
Yeah.
to like subvert your expectations because they start weird and then they do some weird off time, off out of scale thing, and then they're in it.
Mm-hmm. But it's like I wrote down what I thought it was like the mids were turned up too much, and it had too much reverb at the same time. That could be what it was. It might be something else. It was probably on purpose or my headphones messing up. But
No, I had that note in here as well. I was like, weird vocal quality in the beginning was, something that definitely stood out compared to the last one.
and I thought it was going to get a much lower score after that, but it fixed itself pretty quick after that, and then it's just back to. I mean, everybody said most of it, but I have it written on almost every song that the bass is going absolutely insane the entire time.
I think this is the first one he used a wall on too, which is kind of an important. Just it's even more attack than Geddy normally. He played a jazz bass and then switched to the Rickenbacker and then sort of back to the jazz bass, and then the wall just absolutely destroys the mix. Whenever he starts like hitting it hard on this album, he just eats everything else alive. And I think that's part of it. Like, this is the most Geddy he ever sounds.
What about a solo album?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't listened to it. I'm not gonna lie.
You mean like the bass is like taking over? I guess?
It has a wall has a very specific like upper treble content that gives it. It's not that it like takes over the mix, but it has so much attack and so much presence. It's got a lot of like very high voice, and it rings all the way through compared to a lot of other basses that are just very low end and just kind of fundamental. He plays it like a lead instrument here.
See, yeah, that's what it felt like more to me, is that it was the lead and less that it was taking over. Because we had one album, I forget which one of the most recent reviews we did that like did it perfectly, and this was like slightly, I went up, but like slightly worse than that, but it was still done well, I thought. I wish I could remember which one did it that good, but I don't remember what happened last week.
We were off last week.
Yeah, we were.
I don't remember which one was before that.
Yeah, Alex killed it on this one. I don't know if anyone said that, but it's been a while since someone did it the least. So,
dude, his tone on this album in particular. So I went through and looked up some of the amps and stuff he was using.
do you remember which guitar he played on this one?
So this is going to be one of the three customs, which is the Hintor Sportscaster, the Pork Flaps Caster, and there's one other, but they're all HSS Strats. And then I think they were like JCM 800s and jazz choruses and just very 80s things. There's a couple solid state amps going on, but he does not use a ton of pedals, but there's a little bit of drive going on there. It's just everything is super clear and super clean. And part of it was they spent good money recording this album. They had the the label to push them, and they spent a long time doing the arrangements and all that stuff. So he sounds like Alex on this album. I can say that. He definitely does. Cool.
All right.
If we're ready, the next track 4, is Marathon. This one's kind of interesting. I didn't catch this, but it's supposed to be a metaphor for life. Life is full of obstacles, and you have to take small steps to achieve your personal goal.
That fits really well with what I have written down.
Yeah, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, apparently, is how Neil kind of thought about writing it. So
I believe it begins with Vanessa Carlton.
that's how 1,000 miles starts. 500 miles, though, is a little more Canadian tradition. All right, back to Marathon. I gave it an 8.5.
I give it a 6.5.
I gave it a 7.
I gave it a 6.5.
I gave it a 7.
Listen, what's up with that chorus? Why is it an entire verse? It is like 3 or 4 full bars for a chorus.
Yeah. My first note was, we're back to storytelling. Like the next one after, I'm like, man, we are just
But this time it's
riffing.
it's the chorus.
They
It's
just
like,
keep
it's
saying
the
it.
part you're supposed to remember, and it's like, how am I supposed to remember a novel, bro? What's going on here?
But also not memorable words.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
yeah.
really catchy cadence with the least memorable words you've ever heard.
Yeah, I think I just kept forgetting they said it. And I'm like, by the end, I'm like, man, they haven't repeated a single thing here. Like, they just keep talking. And yeah, no, it's just the chorus is just like, man, it didn't stick. So
I mean, drums and bass do kill it here. I mean, obviously. The key change was really interesting in this one. I couldn't decide whether I liked it or didn't like it. I think it was like really close to the bass key. So when it happened, it was just kind of like twinging my ear the weird way. And yeah, it's pretty decent, but it's just kind of here.
So you guys missed the important part. The whole back half of the song is in 7, and they just rip for like 3 or 4 minutes.
So I had it at like a 5.8. And then when that change happens and like everything starts kicking up, I'm like, all right, I kept increasing it like by a point. I'm like, okay, we're getting better. And like the guitar solo, everything. I was just like, yes, this is great.
Oh, I do have an ending is cool note.
This was one of their songs they played live a whole bunch, kind of throughout the rest of the 80s. They played it even through other tours. Just because of that.
I think this is the one where I started to realize what the album was going to keep being was we're going to start really slow. It's going to sound like an 80s cop show, and you're like kind of setting up the scene with this music, and then it's just going to start getting crazy by the end, and it's going to completely switch based on what we start with.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. That's also just a Rush song in general. They tend to almost through compose rather than... So like if they do a big change, most of the time they won't put another chorus back at the end. And that's just a prog rock thing. You know, it's almost more like a symphony. But it happens a lot that they'll just like go off to left field and then just end the song. And you're like, oh, cool. No, but I don't think it's a bad thing. This was kind of an unexpected spot for me, I guess.
Yeah. The solo was good, and you said cop show, but I have this sounded like a sports movie training montage.
Yeah, it's some 80s like movie soundtrack.
Which was funny what you said about what it was actually based off of, because I'm like, that's exactly right.
Yep. It makes
They
total
nailed
sense.
it.
Yeah. The only thing I have written that I probably should even say is that this just doesn't feel like Neil Peart to me. You know, this is the songwriting itself is just okay. The drumming isn't as like it. This track specifically up until this point, because it gets significantly better immediately after the song is done. But he's just not very fun on the drums up until this point. He's kind of pulled back. I almost wonder why.
It's all the 80s influences. You know, this album was super influenced by like Genesis and Yes, and like not so much the Police. That's probably the like moving pictures in that era, but huge influences there too. And all of those drummers are more known for kind of their backbeat playing and just their fills and stuff going on in between. So I think he mellowed it back a little bit. Plus, this song, he wanted the lyrics, I think, to shine. Although, before reading that just now, I would have never picked that out. And I usually try to listen to Neil's lyrics because they're usually interesting, if nothing else. Rush, for a rock band in this era, that's something they always got credit for. Even in the beginning, when other bands were writing songs about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, Rush was writing songs like Subdivisions, which is about how oppressive it can be to be living in a subdivision. Like that's literally what it's about. So I don't know. All right, if we're ready, track 5 is Territories. This one is... it doesn't say it's anything. They just said that it was really hard to write, and apparently Geddy Lee couldn't sing the lyrics, so they had to change it a whole bunch.
All of that makes sense.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense with my score, too. This one got a 7.
This one got an 8.
This one got a 6.
This one got an 8.
This one got a 6.5 for
Logan,
me.
you need to stop. We've
Copied off of
matched
his
on a
homework.
lot of these scores. This intro has like some kind of vibe to it, but I'm struggling to figure out what the vibe is. Like it
Funky
almost
Town.
makes
the
you.
vibe is Funky Town.
Is that what it is?
That's the vibe to me, and I'm here for it.
It also, the guitar tone, it weirdly reminds me of beach music. And it's like, why is Takanaka in my ear?
Yeah.
Where did Rush go?
To Funky Town.
This was where I was totally getting like Hotline Miami. It was like some cop like movie or show. Something is like going down in the intro here. And I'm like, okay, we're starting off with another one of these like classic 80s sounds.
Also, I feel like the message in this one is like,
Have fun.
well, it's a lot of it's about like borders and shit too, and like talking about the world and
yeah,
all that,
that's-
like different countries.
that's
and
kinda what
fake walls.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought it was, too. I thought it was like about like England just taking over the world, essentially.
One of my notes was, what did China do? Well, what? They like start throwing it in there. I'm like, what is happening? What's going on?
I believe they're trying to be like
I was say,
super
was it-
open borders.
Was it so literal about that? I thought it was just about like the walls we put up between one another. And how closed
could
off
be
we make
that.
ourselves. That's how I took it. It was just
It
kind of like
could be
let
that
loose.
too. They just
that.
make specific references to countries.
I don't know, there's a lot of like world music vibes. You said island music. There's a lot of hand drums going on. I don't know. I just thought that was cool. Yeah, interesting tones and voicings is literally what I wrote. It's just, it's a very unrush Rush song. I think was the most interesting note here.
Yeah, this is kind of just like key changed the song a little bit. This was pretty easily a thumbs up plus for me, but it's like this is also the longest song by a decent amount, and it's like I'm not gonna say the worst one, but the worst one.
Yeah, I felt like it did change up a lot, and there was like a part like towards the middle or end where like there was a drum lyric combo happening, and it just felt like they weren't hitting it right. They were just kind of off throughout that whole sequence, and then it just kind of fades off, and then there's like some cool guitar things happening in the back, but they aren't capitalizing on it, and I'm just like, there's just elements there that I'm like, cool, keep doing it, but it just didn't land in this song at all.
I know some of the lyrics Neil was actually sampling and playing on the drums, so that could be
That
be
might
it.
be it, because it was just sounding really awkward with the drums playing.
Yeah,
Like they were trying to hit it on the same thing, but it was weird.
the technology of the time was like, well, not like, was very primitive to be able to do the kind of stuff they were doing. Neil in particular was really, really picky about his electronic drum sounds and recorded all of his own electronic drum sounds until like the early 2000s. They used to travel with like racks and racks of computers and huge hard drives and stuff just for him to play samples, and he would keep everything loaded for every song, and his techs always said it was a freaking nightmare to keep all that running.
Wow.
Because they'd have to have backups on backups to keep all those rigs running, because none of that stuff was really designed to be played live, at least not in the capacity Neil was trying to. So
Yeah.
that would make sense.
Was there like a special guitar pedal or something in the beginning, or like some effect they were throwing on that guitar? Because it was sounding extra rad in this song.
I wonder if it's
It's just the beach vibe, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one may be the one that's got the jazz choruses on it, because I thought there was some like chorus or modulation going on in this song, and he used a flanger on some of the earlier albums, but it's notoriously hard to find any info on what pedals or anything he ever used, and it's also even harder because he didn't even care.
Yeah.
He would just use whatever stuff. So I found a list for what was on this album, and it's like Boss Overdrive is like the list, and I was like, great, thanks. That was super helpful.
Yeah.
And other than his guitars being custom, and them being custom is interesting because they're not really that custom per 80s spec. They're just like super 80s guitars. They're HSS Strats with super high output bridge pickups, and I think decked Floyd Roses. I mean, I think they're just the most 80s guitar imaginable.
I got one of them.
Yeah, the only thing, he gave them all goofy names like Pork Flapsicaster and stuff. Well, he's got a very, very funny sense of humor, but yeah, it's really hard to find any info about Alex's rigs at any point. But yet, if you look up Neil's, they can tell you exactly what drum and what color it was, and this was one of the albums on the Tamas. But they can tell you literally everything about every single drum he played and what made it different than every other one, and how he customized it, and who he customized it with, and what day it was customized on.
Yeah.
And yet you go and people are like, yeah, Alex had a guitar pedal. It
He had a
might have been a
guitar.
Boss.
It's
It
just
is-
playing something with strings.
It is very unfortunate that Alex Lifeson is regarded as the worst member of Rush while being one of the best guitar players that, has touched the instrument. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, he has a lot of really awesome chord voicings, and the way he melds in the group and stuff is all great. It always reminds me of like the Police, because Andy kind of gets the same treatment in the Police. But yeah,
My favorite member of the Police right there.
there's always this really funny comparison between Rush and Triumph, and Triumph is this very guitar-led band and stuff, and in the earlier times, and the guitar player in general from Triumph basically like made a point to say he was way better than Alex Lifeson could ever be, and I'm like, well, yeah, you didn't have Geddy and Neil to compete with, so you sure sounded better on the albums, but I don't know. I'm always impressed that Alex A stayed in the band, and B managed to mostly keep a cool head about it. But if you know anything about the story of Rush, Alex and Geddy were high school friends or middle school friends, or like friends for their entire life, and basically are still inseparable from everything. I understand they were just best friends their entire life, and that's how they made everything work. Because otherwise, I don't think it could. 'Cause I think they kind of put him in a corner, especially on this album. All right, not speaking of in the corner, the next track is Middletown Dreams, which I had. Nope, I don't have. It just says it took a bunch of rewrites. Apparently, this whole album took them a decent amount of time to get done. Rush is a band, they're known for just cranking stuff out, just working and working and working. And up at this point, I'd say they hadn't spent any time that wasn't touring or in the studio. They would like take 2 weeks off, record an album, take 2 weeks off, go on a tour.
Damn, they're really rushing around.
Yeah, I mean they
Get
were.
out.
They're in a rush.
Yeah, I mean in those days bands had to work harder than they do now for sure. But Rush, another reason they got really jaded is they toured with people like Kiss and other bands that did a whole lot less than they did and made a ton more money. So interesting fact. I read what this was about earlier, and now I can't find it, and I feel like an idiot. Sorry, guys. I guess I'm going to fail, and I guess we're just going to go with scores.
Definitely talking about dreams a lot. There was like, it was, I feel like that's
I feel
all
like
they were
it's
talking
being.
about.
I feel like the song is about being stuck in your hometown.
I see. I think
You
it's
you
about,
were like completely trapped. You can't leave your hometown,
Yeah.
and like you have these big dreams to go out and do other things, but you just feel so stuck and stifled and trapped in a world where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's a fairly Rush thing to write a song about.
Yeah, it feels very Rush.
All right. I gave this one a 7.5.
I guess 1 of 7, and also thumbs up plus.
7.6.
I gave this a 7. It would have been a thumbs up, but we couldn't afford those this week.
7.5. And yes, we could. We can. You just have to say more things.
I wrote down notes. Also, I forgot to say it last track. I accidentally listened to the first half of this album 4 times before I started my review listens. It's not because I didn't like want to. I would listen to the first 4 tracks and be like, oh man, I gotta write notes about this. I just had to restart it a bunch. It's bad.
Sorry, I'm still looking up what Middletown Dreams is about. I'm mad now because I read this earlier. I really don't have anything interesting in my notes, as sad as it is. I just have that it's more of the future retro. That the breaks are really clean. It's really, really well rehearsed. And that this is one of the times that Alex gets to shine on the album again. And this is probably the most he sounds like earlier Alex. He's got all the delay on and all the reverb on and hits the amp where it echoes and all the trademarks of his playing. You know, does the whammy bar dives and all that. I don't know. This was the most Alex Lifeson song on the album, I thought.
Yeah, it's got great energy to it. Kicks off fun. Getty is definitely the focus of this album, and that really just upsets me. I like Geddy Lee as a bass player. That's about where I like him, and that was very much not the focus of this album.
I don't know. This song, I don't know. This album, the bass was kind of going stupid the whole time.
Bass
so.
goes nuts the whole time, but the synths are the focus.
It is, yeah. But yeah, I didn't have much either for this one, other than the energy, which I think everything has been said already.
Yeah, this one was kind of just we're getting through it. And I was like, all right, another one where they're talking a lot.
Most Rush song of all time.
Yeah. The keyboard or the synths, like they started picking up the pace in this one, and I was like, okay, I'm liking the energy that they're giving off. But other than that, yeah, it was like missing the other elements being with the keyboard, and I was just like, nah, I don't know. On to the next one.
Yeah, this album just has a really weird like middle album slump, and it's even worse because the synths are so dated that even though I'm sure they were using the coolest technology, you know, I know earlier he used Oberheims. I'm sure this has a ton of Roland and Yamaha FM synthesis stuff on it, 'cause that's what was big at the time. But it's like all the synths just sound the same, and because they're so heavy, this part of the album all sounds the same.
I think the problem is that they're like in a middle part with the synths. Like it's not one synth for accents, and it's not all synth, which it is on, I think, the last song where they fully commit to the synths. So I think most of this album sits in like a in-between where they are like half committing to the synths.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, now, see, I want to see what other hits of 1985 are, because this album was not small. But
Is that the same year as 5150?
Careless Whisper, Like a Virgin, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go. I Want to Know What Love Is by Foreigner.
Those are some pretty tough ones.
Everyone Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears.
Ooh.
Money for Nothing by Dire Straits.
Yeah.
Take On Me. Oh, man.
That was a heavy year.
That was a great year.
Easy Lover.
They
We
got
Built This
rolled.
City. St. Elmo's Fire. Shout by Tears for Fears. Yeah, this is no wonder this album didn't do great.
This album did not have a chance.
No.
No,
No.
That is wild.
not in the fucking world.
Yeah. I expected more of those songs to be way synth heavier, but I guess they weren't.
They're all like synth pop, but this is
Yeah.
synth rock, which really didn't catch a stride ever. It kind of came and went and ebbed and flowed, but not was ever mainstream.
It's not this track. I think it's the next track. I literally wrote synthwave. No, that's the last one.
It's the last
The
one.
next track is like Zach Wild levels
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Pink
no.
Harmonic.
But it's like it's so synthy, and it's really interesting because I never have thought very much of this album until like going back and listening to it and being like, oh, this is what everyone thinks the 80s sounded like.
Oh, yeah.
But it's such a weird thing to think and conceptualize as much as this album does it. Like it makes me want to drive around a Ferrari convertible in Miami wearing the exact outfit I'm wearing now. Like,
We gotta add some aviators on there, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, give them your sunglasses. Yeah.
they won't fit over my glasses, unfortunately. I don't want to stretch them out.
They already are. I got a big head.
All right. Next to last track, track 7, is Emotion Detector. I gave this one a 7.
I also gave this one a 7.
I gave it an 8.
I gave it a 7.
7.5.
We have matched on our last 4 scores, Logan.
Half of my scores are 7.
That's true. Half of mine are 7.
I'm going to get this one out of the way. It's a thumbs up plus.
Ooh.
Honestly, fair enough, because the only thing that I could really pick out of this song to focus on was I had a weird moment during this intro, and I couldn't get it out of my head that beat, that intro beat, sounds exactly like Love is a Battlefield. It's like I heard the intro whoa to Love is a Battlefield right over top of that.
I hear it now. That's so funny.
Right? And I like everything that's going on, but it feels like just another Rush song. I hate to say that, but they have a lot of music out there, and it just feels like another play.
So I failed at my job. This is the only track on the album Rush never performed live. That's the neat fact for this album, or for this track.
Even they were like, yeah.
They probably couldn't. There's so many layered synths behind everything. I didn't think it was this song, but this is another one with a lot of synths.
People are always like, Rush played everything live. That's kind of a lie. Their techs did trigger a few things on some of the albums because some of it was just impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's like actually just impossible. So it was pretty common that like their keyboard tech or their drum tech would trigger something backstage.
Yeah. One of the notes I had on this one was it just sounded like dungeon synth in the beginning. Like there was these really low, like ominous sounding notes being hit where I was like, ooh, okay, like we're getting into this weird part of the album where we're not as like cop show soundy. Like they were trying something a little different in this one, and that's why I gave it a little bit higher of a score. And also I feel like I had a note for every instrument. Like we really hit on everything through this song, and it was pretty well balanced.
Yeah.
Except for the lyrics. The lyrics are just...
I think this was definitely the song where Alex went to him and said, I have not played enough on this album. Because they just let him go buck wild. To the point where, like, at some points, it got just a little absurd. He starts, like, bending and going out of tune. Like I said, there's a wild amount of pinch harmonics. It's how I play. And I know that it's not the greatest, so I had to dock points for that.
I did think it was weird that while he was going nuts during the solo, the bass decided to have his own solo on top of it, pretty much.
That's Rush.
Yeah.
Literally, like somebody will play a solo and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Let's all," and then they just go ham. That's one of the best parts. I don't know.
Guess if it was consistent, it'd be different. But this is like the only time on this album that it happens.
Yeah.
This is also on the soundtrack to that sports movie from earlier. Was my other big note.
Nice. All right. So last track 8, is Mystic Rhythms. I got a bunch for this one. This is the one that has Lifeson playing the acoustic guitar, running through a synthesizer or created a synthesizer sound. Each instrument on the track was fed through a synthesized something, according to Geddy Lee.
I believe it.
Other neat facts. They played this all the time live. This was one of the ones Neil's drum set rotated around for. This was used as the opening song for an NBC News program, and this was the other single off the album. And the video was directed by one of the guys from Devo, which is also a really strange Rush fact.
Which one?
Gerald.
I don't know.
Yeah, hold on. Let's figure out which one. He was the bass player in Devo.
Okay. So not the absurdly tall one?
Yeah, I don't. He wore a flower pot on his head, man. That's all I can tell you. Cool. I gave this one a 9.
I give this one a 7.5.
Gave it a 7.8.
You'll never guess. 7.
I give this one an 8.
Nice. So this is one that I've always heard the live version. The live version even was the one on Chronicles, which was the Rush CD my dad had growing up, and then I frequently borrowed and later made a copy of so that I could listen to it. Sorry, Rush. But anyway, Mystic Rhythms has this really like legendary drum intro that I'll randomly like get stuck in my head sometimes. Find myself playing when I just randomly sit down on a drum set. I don't know. I just thought that was one of the coolest things. And it actually makes for a really good closer on this album, I thought. That's pretty much my whole notes.
Yeah, I had a note about I liked the drum start. Felt like it was really interesting, like they were trying something a little new there. Pretty slow build, but I feel like the guitar sounds were just crazy through this one, and I guess it's because of that synth fed effect.
I like a lot of what's going on in the background. That was my main point with this song. I really focused on a lot of that while I was listening to it. Kind of let everything else just kind of go away. And I really honed in on the drums. I thought the drums sounded super cool all the way throughout this track. I thought the chorus was also pretty good. Like, as I kind of ignored the verses, unfortunately. But when the chorus came in, I actually found myself paying attention to it. And I thought it was pretty nice. Yeah, this is a pretty good track.
Were there some like reverse like guitar notes through this? It felt like something was like getting almost a reverse tone that was being fed through.
It could be they could have flipped some of the stuff. I mean, it was all running through something or another. to
Yeah,
make
it was. That was probably my favorite part of the song. Was like the weird reverse, like odd sounding guitar that was happening through there.
If I remember right, this song's about being in a relationship. I think.
I could see that.
I think that's what it's about. Give me the lyrics, dang it.
Yeah. It's a pretty fine song. It did exactly what it was supposed to as a closer. I don't think there's anything to complain about. Yet again, go check out other Rush stuff. I think anything before this, you'll get a lot more Alex, and as a guitar player, it's pretty good. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was very wrong. It's about like the world, the pulse of the world moving through all of us.
Oh.
nothing
Some,
like a girlfriend.
Avatar.
Yeah, very much like Avatar. Yeah.
Hey, in Avatar, you know what they be doing with that hair?
Yeah. Listening to Rush with it.
The wrong Avatar, but yeah.
Really? I thought we were talking about like the Tree of Life Avatar.
No, I
I'm-
think we were talking about Aang.
Yeah, I'm
not
talking
the
about
blue
Aang.
cat people.
Oh no, my brain went like the full like Tree of Life thing that they have going on. I was like, oh, that's the same thing, Pulse of Life. You know,
One
they
with
all
the
connect to the
world.
tree. They're one with the world. Yeah.
No, I was talking about Ong, the Airbender.
Those poor. Aang.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan was right. Fight me. I'm kidding. He was not right. That movie's it's awful. All right, sorry.
Unfortunately for you, that explanation will not make it into the Monday Wednesday reel.
Aang.
I will never live that one down. No.
Yeah, choruses are carrying, but there's a lot of synth work, like Carl was saying, to the point where I was like not writing down notes because I would go to write something and get distracted by a different layer of synth in this song. And I thought that was really cool. I understand how people, especially people who listen to a lot of Rush, might not like that as much. But I listen to that anyway, so.
This is one that they again played. I mean, like Marathon, they played this live a whole bunch, and it continued to be one of the more known Rush tracks up into the '90s.
I bet if you put this with a bunch of other better Rush songs, I'll like it more. I think you just gave me like 2 mid songs in a row, and then this one, I'm like, man, it's kind of mid too. It's just what's around it. It's also, this whole album is synth heavy. It's not very Neil heavy, which is kind of disheartening. It's just too much of the one thing. It's the same thing we run into with a lot of those like 80s. Well, ironically enough, almost every 80s album or 80s style album we do, we have the same problem where by the end, we're just sick of hearing like that one tone, and this is a very dated tone. So
Yeah, I was hoping for a big finish. I had like on my notes, I was like, please be a good like closer. Like, I need something here. And then when it just started slowly building into it, I'm like, gosh, not again. They did it again.
I don't know, I'm glad they kind of put the album the way they did though, because at least we had a big one kind of at the end. This album did pretty well when it came out. I was curious because I looked at the next album, and there's not, the first 2 songs are the 2 good songs on Hold Your Fire. So, you know, it's kind of like they didn't figure it out, and that album did pretty poorly for Rush. That was probably their worst since like the first album. So I don't know. They sort of figured it out here. I think in In Canada, this one did better than Grace Under Pressure, which is interesting to me. What?
The next album is terrible.
Oh yeah, the next album is pretty not
It's
good.
got Time Stand Still though.
Yeah, it's got Time Stand Still, and then Presto gets a little better, and then we get them like stepping into their comedy for Roll the Bones. You get, and they're kind of back after that.
I say after that, yeah, it's pretty solid.
But what's interesting is Rush had already kind of like that whole genre was kind of just gone. So after Roll the Bones, they're competing against like mostly hip hop and that kind of stuff for pop charts. So they didn't really sell like they did before that. They're an interesting band because they kind of always did whatever they wanted rather than appealing to the fans. And I don't remember Neil's quote exactly, but someone complained about how Rush wasn't hard rock anymore during this era. And Neil basically said, well, if you don't like it, we'll find new fans. And I've always thought there's something just incredibly genuine about having that opinion. So, all right, we are ready to go to pacing is next. And I gave it a 7.
I also gave it a 7.
Give it a 6.8.
I gave it 10.
I gave it an 8.
Explain.
Logan's like, this is way too short.
Look, to be completely honest, I listened to the first 4 tracks 4 times in a row. Not one complaint out of me. I may not love the tracks themselves. The way they flow into each other was pretty solid. I mean, they cop a fade, like 3 times on the album? The rest is like a flow with a fade because you had to. It's the 80s.
Is it 3? I only remember the one.
Yeah, it may just be... There's a couple that like fade out, but not as harsh. There's one that's a harsh fade.
See, the last one fades out pretty egregiously, but
There's at least one more that's like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's gonna happen. Other than that, it's like they're all about the same length, except one song's shorter, so one song can be longer. It was good. I liked how it was paced.
no, I completely agree. The only time that I felt like any song like overstayed its welcome was Territories, and it was by like a full minute the longest song. It makes sense.
That was my top track.
So I got a couple things. So the main thing was I feel like some of the intros and some of the fade outs, the ones that we already talked about, they are drawn out, but that's going to happen. The other thing for me, we hit 2 points where I feel the lyrics get egregious. 55 O's is ridiculous. And then having like 5 or 6 sentences be your chorus, that's also ridiculous. So it just kind of took me out of it. It made those songs a little bit harder to listen to. Yeah, in this album, it feels, because of how many songs we get here, we only get 8 songs, right? There's just a distinct feel that some of those intros and outros were drawn out to pad time, and I don't like that. I don't like that it feels like that.
Yeah, that was like one of my biggest negatives was like I get the payoff for a build, like having all of these songs end really cool, but every time we don't need to do like a 2-minute like just slow roll, get into it, and then follow it up with a whole story. Like we are just yapping into the mic for half of these songs, and I'm like, all right, let's get into like the instrumentals, let's start getting like higher pace. And they do get to that in pretty much every song. Like they get to a great point, but you have to go through a slog in the beginning to get to that.
My score is just because it needed to be more Rush. There just wasn't enough of them on this album, and there was too much synthy stuff. And I appreciated it in Mystic Rhythms when it was like a genuine, interesting thing. And I think I got through like, the mid part of this album starts with like, it really starts after Marathon for me, but I could understand that Marathon was it too. The kind of whole middle chunk of this album is just, it's kind of bland for Rush. And it's not that that's a bad thing. I just think it made it feel like it was a drawn-out album. Although, as far as Logan is concerned, you're definitely right. They all do move to one another very well because Rush tended to think of how they were going to play this live when they were doing the songs. They kind of baked that in from the beginning. So all of their albums from us would probably get a pretty good pacing score just for that reason. Neat. Figured that was the best way to end that. All right. This is probably going to be super controversial. On to album art. This is a 10.
8.
I gave it a 9.
Yeah, I gave it an 8.
8.5.
It's
Not-
really good.
Oh, it's so good.
So
It's great.
let me tell the story. So it's a painting, right? But it's a painting of a photograph of a real guy whose name is Neil Cunningham. And in 2016, they found him and interviewed him, and he owned a used book and record store in Toronto.
Sweet.
So, oh, come on. Let me show you. This is what the guy looked like in 2016.
He looks the exact
He
same.
looks-
Yeah.
Same
His hair
haircut.
was so cool.
He looks exactly the same. And they took a picture of him holding the album.
That's awesome.
That's great.
But it's a painting of a photo of him.
After seeing the picture of him holding it, I'm
Yeah,
giving it
that's
a 9.
10. I'll
No,
give it a 10.
you're right. That's a 10.
I'll throw it to a 10. That's
the
really
the
cool.
lore gets it to a 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the real question: did they take the photograph, or did they just find this photograph and they're like, "Let's paint it"?
I think so. The guy's name was Demo something, and I think he was a rock photographer. So I don't know if they probably had it taken for the album because he's on the front and the back, and there's a different photo on the back.
Okay.
So it's 2 photos of the same guy, and they were taken in Toronto. He's a Toronto dude, so I'm assuming they did it for the album, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. The only thing that I think was like a negative to it was I get like the era and like branding your name, like Rush, especially Rush, the iconic like typography for them. It has to be on the cover. But if you just get rid of that and it's just the painting, oh, perfection.
For me, the Rush logo adds.
Really? Okay, there
Yeah,
you go.
that pink line underneath too. Holy hell, it adds. I was like, this is super cool.
Oh, yeah.
And then
I agree with you, but I think they could. Is it the album title under it?
Mm-hmm.
I think they could get rid of that. But other than that, I don't exactly get it in reference to the album, but I get it.
Look,
Well,
I just
If
He's-
that
thought-
makes any sense.
He's looking through the power window.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
But
know
like with the TVs and everything else, like I got the window.
Yeah,
being
those
there,
take the power that's coming through
Mhm.
the window of power.
I was starting to think that was what the power. I thought the window irrelevant. Now we got the power windows as the TVs, and I'm like, oh yeah.
I thought it was like a media versus breaking out of it thing. Like, you're turning your face away from what, media is teaching you and all that, and you are returning to the original powers, which is, lightning, the elements, all that.
Look at Big Brain over here understanding art.
But it was also pretty sick
He's the
that
art guy.
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
I guess I'm the art guy.
Yeah. But like the electricity was in the window, so it was like
Yeah.
it's almost like the window was being powered
Mhm.
in a way. So I was like, oh, it's got layers.
Like an onion.
Yeah.
Like an ogre, yeah. If it matters to anyone, it won a Juno Award. We're not Canadian, so we don't know what that is, and we don't care. But if it matters to anyone, the artwork won a Juno Award. Russia,
Like
South
the
Park.
movie?
South Park is very right.
It's a movie about
That's a
teenage
movie.
pregnancy.
So this is some interesting Rush lore I didn't think I was going to figure out how to talk about. But so South Park is definitely right. Like in Canada, Rush is just like it. So whenever something would come out, they would just win the award for it, no matter what. It was just kind of a given that they were going to do it. The reason Rush is in South Park is because at one point, one of the South Park guys, I don't remember whether it was Trey or Matt, lived down the street from Neil Peart.
I think it was Matt.
And because during the break, it's a big long story with Neil. A bunch of crazy stuff happened. His daughter died, and then his wife died, and then he went on a motorcycle trip around the world, and then he moved to California. It's insane, but he ended up living down the street from one of the 2 South Park guys with a new wife and new family, and they went over to his house to do a barbecue or something. Or maybe he just walked up and knocked on his door. I don't remember exactly what the story is. But whenever they would want to put Rush in South Park, they would just walk over to his house and knock on the door, and he'd just laugh and go, let me call the guys and make sure. But I'm sure it's fine.
That's sweet.
So that's why Rush is in South Park so much, if anyone didn't know.
It was before Drake. Before Drake claimed Canada.
All right, well, with the South Park lore, I guess it's time to move to overall. I give this an 8 overall.
Give it a 7.5 overall.
I also gave it a 7.5.
Yeah, I gave it a 7.
7.5.
It's a good album. It's just, for me, like, I know what Rush sounds like. Like if we had, you know,
That's
like
exactly my review.
Yeah.
like seriously, if you had given us this album and told us this was some band we'd never heard of, I'm sure this album would be a 9 or a 10, and the songs would have rated higher. But we know what to expect. We've all heard Moving Pictures. We've all heard all of the other good albums. I mean, they're all good.
I think we've all religiously listened to Rush at some point or other.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in my life that I think Neil Peart was like my own personal god.
This is Baby's first Rush album.
It's your first Rush.
Hey
What?
guys, hey guys, I'm Baby.
Go listen to Moving Pictures.
Yeah,
You will like Moving Pictures more than this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
sweet.
Yeah, and just start at Moving Pictures and then just work your way out in a spiral.
There we go.
That's
Okay.
that's the way to do it, probably.
Yeah, yeah. No, this album had some good highs, and I think like between the pacing issues, I felt like I got a song like added to the playlist on there. Like it was great. So I think it was a pretty good '80s album that just kind of showed everything the '80s had to offer there. So it was good.
It was a pretty standard Rush album.
Yeah.
Like, it had some pretty good songs, but then it just had regular Rush songs. It's every Rush album for you.
Sorry, I was just really, really tempted to like mansplain Rush since he said he'd never heard, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. These people need to go listen to Rush if they haven't.
Yeah. All right. What are we listening to next week?
Next week. Oh, it removed the page. Hold on. Next week, we will be reviewing In Danger of Collapse by Heimworker. This is a suggestion off of, I believe, Song Review 6. It's been sitting for a while because we had the 4 weeks of predetermined albums and then a week off, but we're finally getting to it.
Hey, we also had this as a comment, and you can leave a comment for something for us to review. Do it now. Like, comment, subscribe too. Bye-bye.
Wow, just flat by. No.
You're welcome, Rush guys.
Yeah. Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here, Max.
Bye. Goodbye. Sweet little German boy. I'm a sweet little German boy. Goodbye.